Hi, this is Simon Ubstill and welcome to another tutorial for Apple Motion, and today I want to show you a few cool things you can do with edges. So, stuff like that. Let's get started on it. So here we are in Motion, and this is our sample video that I've downloaded from pexels.com. It's a couple running through a tunnel, and I thought it'd be pretty good for this because it's got lots of nice movement that's going to show off this effect pretty well. So there is an easy way of creating edges in Motion, and that's to come to Filters, Stylize, Add Edges, drop that on there. Not a lot initially, but if we come over to the inspector, you can crank up the intensity all the way and you get this sort of result. Now, you don't even have to look closely to see that this is really very grungy and not something you're going to be able to use very often. In fact, I've rarely ever been able to use this filter with any success on pretty much anything. So let's actually delete that and let's look at a different way of doing an edge. So I'm going to right click on the video and I'm going to make a clone layer, and I'm going to come over to the transform and set the X and Y positions to 4. And then I'm going to set the blend mode to subtract. And immediately you can see we've got a much nicer looking edge. And what we can do is, if we want to increase the intensity of that edge, or indeed turn it to black and white, let's turn it to black and white first of all. We can just come to threshold. Sorry, we need to put that on the group and adjust the threshold value. You see that we're getting a sort of more cut out version of it. In some cases, it's quite nice to stick with this sort of partial grey look that you get if you leave in a little bit of smoothness, because it starts to look a little bit embossed. The other thing I want to point out is that obviously we can increase or decrease the width of this edge. So by adjusting this position offset, or if we wanted to go the other way and really beef it up, we could go with that. So I'm just going to adjust that threshold a little bit so we get rid of the grey. I think that's probably better. And then to this group, I'm going to, just for fun, add a time and trails. And then if we just increase some of this a little bit so we can get a really nice result, I think this looks pretty cool on the run. So what we could do with this group now is we could use it to affect our underlying video if we wanted. So I'm going to clone my underlying video, right click, make clone layer, and drag that out into a new group below our main group here. I'm going to set its blend mode to multiply. And now what we're getting is the full color version of that, but just in the areas where the edges are and that trails is. So if I turn off the trails, you'll see we're just getting the colorized edges. With the trails, we're getting that. The other thing we could do is, instead of multiply, we could set it to overlay, which is kind of a little bit subtler version of that. Or we could even go the opposite way and set it to something like add. And then what we're getting is this kind of bright edge like that, which is kind of interesting, almost like we're sort of sketching over the edges. What else can we do? Let's switch this back to normal, I think, just so I can show you the next bit. If I add a blur to this, so Gaussian blur, drop that in just above the threshold there, and then duplicate the threshold and move it above the Gaussian blur. And now if we adjust the Gaussian blur, you can see that we can increase the sort of blobbiness of those lines. Then we can use our second threshold, bring down the softness to make those a little bit more sort of abstract like that. Probably doesn't really work in this case, but maybe it'll work if we turn this back to multiply. Just playing around here, don't shoot me. I'm just trying to give you some interesting ideas. I'm not sure that's working in this case, but there probably are cases where it might work. So I'll just delete those two new effects. And I want to point out one other thing, switch this back to normal. What we can do is we can play with this threshold and set its background color to something other than black. That, for example, and that is actually looking quite nice, I think. Much more like a sort of a drawing that's come to life. And we could even go to town and bring in a texture. So I'll just grab something from the library here, and I'm going to drag it into my background group here below the clone like that, and I'm going to set that color back to black. Then I'm going to take my clone layer there, right click, add image mask, use this group as the source, set the source channel to luminance. Just need to adjust my background here, zoom in on that, add a levels, and bring down the levels quite a bit like that. So now we're getting that over a texture, and I think that too is kind of pretty interesting. So there's probably loads more things you can do. I just wanted to give you a sort of appetizer of the kind of stuff that you can do with this technique. And it's a whole lot better, as I say, if you roll your own edge effects rather than relying on the Apple version. So the only technical detail I should leave you with is that because we are shifting one of the layers, we're getting an edge around two of the sides. And what you'd need to do there is just simply increase the size of the group a little bit just to compensate. Anyway, just a small technical detail. So thanks for watching. See you again soon.